Okay, welcome back to the Don Miller Podcast. Thank you so much again. I want to get in here, get out of the gate quick. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for those of you who have watched this show previously. Thank you so much for those who have told their friends about it. For those who support us, we appreciate you. Once a week right now, the Don Miller Podcast. Subscribe and like. Head over to YouTube, Don Miller Show. Subscribe and like. Tell your friends about it. So much to talk about this evening. My conversation this evening is going to center around what I've been saying for years, what I've been calling for years, weapons of mass distraction, and how they have been placed upon the black community in this country, and how so many people have continued to look past the plight of the black community in America and bring us their issues, and we, for some reason, take up the cross for everybody else and allow our issues to continue to run rampant without any acknowledgement. So again, thank you so much for joining us. I think I'm going to probably open the phone lines if someone wants to have this conversation today. Again, subscribe and like, tell your friends about the show. Hey, man, what's going on, Phil?
Hey, welcome, man.
Hey, man, I got so much to talk about today. I want to get out of the gate because another weapon of mass distraction is breaking as we speak. It looks like former President Donald Trump is being charged, being indicted by a Manhattan district attorney in a hush money investigation. Of course, this is a misdemeanor, and we're going to continue to follow this. But again, Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, looks like he is going to be indicted or has been indicted. That is breaking news. The story will probably be on the news for the next 10 days. Everybody's going to be talking about the misdemeanor charges that Donald Trump is facing in Manhattan. So stay with that. We'll continue to follow that here on the show. But I see Donald Trump's indictment as another weapon of mass distraction. And again, we have to, and I want to spend some time on this, discuss some things that I think we have allowed to happen in our communities, unlike any other community. Every subgroup in this country continues to attach themselves to what they believe is their crisis, and they stay committed to it. Nobody comes in and throws off their conversation. Only in our community do we allow this to happen. So I am going to spend some time this evening talking about weapons of mass distraction and how we continue to embrace them. And I want to take it to a point, Phil. Lady stops me the other day, and she says, you know, I listened to your show on the radio and on the podcast, and you got to spend some time and talk about all these guns that are being used to kill people, and that's a real problem, the big guns. We got to take these big guns off the street. And I can tell you, again, you got to be careful, right, when you think you hear somebody on a broadcast and you assume that they are committed to a conversation. She went on to say, you know, these guns are killing young black men. Ma'am, no, they're not. The big guns aren't killing black men. American black people have a handgun crisis. Okay, now, is it a gun situation? Absolutely. But again, we have to be careful and stay to what we need help with. We need help with addressing things in our community that's totally different. Look, I am burnt out. I can tell you, I started talking about it last year. I have compassion fatigue. I am suffering from compassion fatigue, and now it has gone over into propaganda fatigue for me. There's some things that I'm just not interested in talking about. And if you can't get to the basis of what the situation is, it's just, to me, I'm not interested in having a conversation. And I want to start this off by talking about the 30% black versus white home ownership gap in America. The 30% gap between blacks and whites in home ownership. This is a gap, right, that for some reason nobody wants to have this conversation, right? But think about this, right? This gap is larger, Phil. This 30% gap is larger than it was in 1968. More black people owned homes in 1968 than they do today, right?
So what happened?
The home ownership gap. Of course, redlining and a whole bunch of things came along that were discriminatory at the highest level. But in 1968, the gap wasn't this large, and housing discrimination was legal. And we have an amazing, extreme affordable housing crisis in America. And if America has a cold, the black community has pneumonia. So that extreme affordable housing crisis is hitting the black community unlike any place else. So listen, just be careful. And we need to feel okay as black people. I wanted to have this show. We need to feel okay as black people, not to say, okay, I'm going to march with you on that cause, because who's marching with you? And that's my point about this, right? Listen, stop asking me my thoughts on LGBT and transgender. I don't want to talk about that. I'll get back to that at a later date, right? But what I can tell you is the alphabet mafia, the LGBTQ mafia, is pushing the envelope, and they are getting heard. And I get it. It's a sensitive conversation. Don Miller, how dare you say that? Listen, you know what you're going to get when you listen to the Don Miller Show. I've been doing this for a very, very, very long time. And if I come here and spew some nonsense, then you could find something else to listen to. But the fact of the matter is, there's a crisis looming that has been looming for a very long time in the black and brown community. And stop bringing us your crisis. We have issues. I like to bring it where the basic person can understand it. In 2019, Phil, let me give you a stat.
Okay.
Almost 60 people died of cardiac arrest in black churches in America, right?
What?
Almost 60 people died, right? In black churches in America. And let me just say this. Let me explain to you why when I brought that up. And Tamika Page and I were talking about this. Think about this, right? The gap between a black person, someone saving the life of a black person in their home or in public by CPR is almost 55 times greater than a white person. So people are, we don't even, who's teaching us CPR? How many churches in America, how many black churches in America, how many inner city programs to teach us CPR? That's a conversation that I when I heard that, Phil, I was like, whoa. And then I thought about it. How many friends you know in your community that know CPR? Phil, how many you know?
Man, I know ACLS.
Right. But I'm like, look, I want to start to spend time on things that are affecting our community. You look at the health disparity that's driven by food deserts, right? The health disparity is a serious byproduct of food deserts in this country. That's a crisis in our community.
Can you explain what a food desert is again?
A food desert is a place where you don't have access to quality foods and vegetables, right? And go look around. This is why you see 25 corner stores, right? Where you can go in and get a pickle out the jar and a pig foot, right? No, really. That's what I grew up with. And so we suffer from diabetes and hypertension at a great rate because there's no quality food near where we live, right? That's a crisis that the bell's been ringing for many, many years. I am just concerned that everybody else is bringing us their crises, and we are, okay, we're with you. Lady says to me the other day, are you going to talk about the shooting at the school in Nashville? I'm going to do what everybody else says. My prayers and thoughts are with them, okay? Because that's all everybody's same thing. Every time you see a politician, a head of state, come to the microphone, my prayers and thoughts are with them. But nothing is getting done, right? So my concern is this. I'm going to spend some time talking about for the next few whatever, right? Don't bring me your crisis. We have real issues that we can be discussing, that we have been played over and over again. We have been played, right? Politicians are coming at us real soon. It's a political season. They say, oh, Ron DeSantis is a racist and Donald Trump's a racist and everybody's a racist. The race curveball is upon us at a level that we haven't seen in a while. But every time the bell rings for someone to go vote, they bring race in it. Oh, no, they bring race to us. Well, they don't even like black people. Well, the governor, it took African-American studies out of AP, and now he's trying to remove the Divine Nine sororities and fraternities from college campuses. Go bring me that. Bring me that too. Let me see that. I want someone to join me and explain to me exactly how real that is. But again, it's just so often brought to us, the racial curveball. Let me tell you what the racial curveball. I came up with this a long time ago. You ever played baseball and the pitcher's on the mound and he's throwing the ball at you, Phil, and the ball's coming, and just when you think the ball's coming to you, it goes in a different direction, right? It's the racial curveball. And I am tired, extremely tired, burnout, compassion fatigue, decision fatigue, propaganda fatigue, as it relates to people keep promising black folk, the black community, I got you, I'm coming, I'm on my way, I got you, just stay there, I'll be there in a minute, I'll be there directly, just vote for me first so I can be in a position to do something for you. And then we go out and we vote for them, Phil, and we get the racial curveball. And I am concerned that until we get to a point where we make a decision to put some value on our vote, then we are going to be sucked into the racial conversation every election cycle. Well, you know you got to vote because they hate black people. They're going to just take all the black people. I remember a presidential candidate a few years ago say, oh, they're going to put them in chains. They're going to put you back in chains, right? Like, cut it out. Cut it out. There are communities in this country couldn't suffer anymore. And they have become burnout. So you can't scare me. I talked about this on my radio broadcast a few months ago. I'm not scared anymore. I'm not scared anymore because there are some things that we should be talking about that we are not talking about. And then we vote for politicians, oftentimes who look like us, who won't talk about the things that we should be talking about. Phil, you remember I came and told you the lady stopped me and was like, oh, my God, what are we going to do, Mr. Miller, about the opioid crisis in our community that's killing our kids? I said, man, where you live? Mm-hmm. That's killing your kids. No, I'm very serious. And I don't want to sound like I'm not compassionate or care. I do care. But guess what, right? When we had a crack cocaine crisis, nobody came for us. We were incarcerated en masse. Not the seller, not the distributor of such drug, but the user of crack cocaine was incarcerated en masse. The prison industrial complex started on the basis of crack cocaine, crack versus powder. You could have, if you look at the guidelines, crack versus powder, under one of those Biden crime bills, the guidelines were racial out of the gate. You had to have a significant amount of powder to face a minimum mandatory sentence, yet all you needed was 5 grams of crack. It's still cocaine, but that was set up 100% to push a narrative. And I think it is time that we hold our hand up and say enough's enough. And I just want to spend some time on this, right? We are dying from handguns at an alarming rate in Chicago and Cleveland and Cincinnati and many of these urban communities, right? And it just gets swept by. There is a mass shooting every 3 days in many of these urban cities. And they don't even call them mass shootings. The definition of a mass shooting, you guys know what it is. I don't have to tell you. But this is happening over and over and over. It gets big news when it's somebody else. It's not fair. It's definitely not fair. But who is ringing the bell for you? You continue to give your vote away. The vote's the only currency you got, guys. You know that. You ain't got no money. You've been moved away from the only wealth situation you had, and that was home ownership historically. So that's gone. So now all you have is your vote, and you have to be careful with your vote. You got to call people out too, Phil. You got to call them out. You got to call bull when it's bull, right? So I just kind of came in here hot today. I didn't want to do too much thinking. I talked to D'Amica, and we talked about food apartheid, right? There is a serious issue in black homes. People are going to bed hungry in 2023. Children, a black child is 3 times more likely to go to bed hungry than a white kid in America. Still America. Watch the long haul COVID numbers in urban America. It's coming. Nobody's talking about environmental racism. The fact that many of our communities, we are drinking water that's contaminated by bad pipes. because the infrastructure hadn't been addressed in many years. So I just think, look, I'm not knocking anybody else's crisis. Everybody got their crisis. But don't give me your crisis. And especially don't come to me if you ain't going to put mental illness at the forefront of many of these mass shootings. Mental illness. No, it's just a gun. No, mental illness. Mental illness. That's a crisis, not only in the black community, but across the country, but nobody wants to take it on. So feel free to join me. I want to open up the phone lines tonight, 352-717-4071, 352-717-4071. I'm just tired. And I just don't understand how we find it okay to spend so much time taking on everybody else's conversation. I just did 3 shows in a row on the plight of Eatonville, Florida, America's oldest black incorporated township, and what is happening tomorrow possibly in Eatonville, Florida. The last 100 acres of the land donated by Robert Hungerford to that community to build a school is being sold off to developers who want to change the entire face of Eatonville, Florida. Listen, this is not even about capitalism or I just believe that even if that deal happens, right? How do you do that deal without a minority in that deal? You do that deal without a minority because you know nobody's going to say anything. But they hit you with the bell. Head up to Tallahassee. The governor just took black studies, African-American studies, out of the AP courses. Yeah, there are 200,000 kids in AP, and less than 8% of them are black. The crisis in AP is not African-American history. The crisis in AP is our black children are not in AP. But somebody white said he don't like us anymore. So listen, stop. Let it go. Some of this has nothing to do with the growth or development or your community or your children. Our children attend schools in most of these communities are in our second or third tier at best. That's a conversation. That's a crisis. Okay, I had to get that off my chest. Hey, Phil, man, how you doing? I had to get that off my chest, man. No, it's just real, man. It's so crazy to me, right? When I look at all the aspects that are happening in our communities, right? Think about this. In 20 and 21, maternal deaths rose by almost 30%, right? In Hispanic and black women. Dying while giving birth. How does that happen and nobody's ringing the bell? The number jumped significantly. But every time you want to have this conversation with some of your friends who don't look like you, they take it back to, well, you know, the black family don't have daddies in the house. Yeah, do you know why they don't have daddies in the house, right? The fact of the matter is, don't bring me your crisis anymore. Let's have a real conversation about what is driving this. I don't want to talk about Donald Trump. I don't want to talk about Ron DeSantis. And it's amazing to me how much time people spend on these guys and you don't even vote for them. We should be holding the people we vote for, holding their feet to the fire. You over there worry about Donald Trump. You didn't vote for Donald Trump. You didn't vote for Ron DeSantis. You're not going to vote for Ron DeSantis. Matter of fact, most of you don't even vote. But it's, hey, he don't like black people. Oh, he don't? Okay, we're going to march with you, right? Cut it out. Stop telling me what my crisis is. My crisis has been ongoing for the better part of 70 years. And I go all the way back, right, to A. Philip Randolph marching on Washington after he came out of Jacksonville, Florida. Great conversation. A. Philip Randolph started the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Across the country, you had these porters working on the railroads, all black men. And he started the first union of these men, and he merged it with the American Federation of Labor under George Meany. And they went to the president, and they had a question for the president. The president said, what does the Negro want? And the Negro, 80 years ago almost, wanted jobs and justice. And what does the Negro want today? Jobs and justice. How are we winning if we're still requesting basic things that we as American citizens should have? Well, maybe you need to visit your vote. Maybe you need to take your vote more seriously. And when you're driving down the street and throwing your vote out the window, Nobody's going to come talk to you because they know how you're going to vote. Okay, I had to get that off my chest, man. Hey, y'all, how y'all doing again? Breaking news, President Trump looks like he's being indicted by the Manhattan District Attorney. I'm looking at these memes, and they're out here dragging this situation. Wow, finally they got him. One person said he's going to jail. Yay. And my concern is, at what point, right, did black people start cheering for somebody to go to jail? Right?
Yeah.
In a system that we know has been broken. Look, I'm not a Trump guy. Everybody knows that. But I'm a guy that calls what I see right or wrong. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not touching that one. I'm going to stand down because that's not really the crisis that we have. We got real serious issues right now. And politicians have shown us historically, over and over again, black ones and white ones alike, that all they want is your vote. And until we figure that out, we're going to be stuck, man. And I don't understand how we can continue to feel okay being stuck. Go ahead, Phil. I'm sorry, man. I'm just struggling, man. I came in here today. I was like, I'm not even going to go on and do the show, but I had to come in here, right?
I'm confused because how do people who vote for these politicians and then the politicians don't do anything afterwards? Well, how do they keep getting elected?
Again, they keep getting elected because they have a base of people. Phil, is the chat open? Because I just said it disconnected.
No, the chat's open.
Okay.
David Washington just said say
great.
that.
I'm just saying, they're just basic things, guys, right? They're just basic things. Thank you so much, LaTanya and Zenda. They're just basic things like every black church should have a CPR course, right?
Yeah.
Every black church should have a CPR course, right? That's easy. After church, we got somebody coming in, we're going to teach CPR. How easy is that, right? So when these people go home to their aging relatives, right, who are already suffering from a multitude of issues, right, at least there's a chance that if something happens, they can be saved, right?
Yeah.
Or until help arrives. The fact of the matter is, right, here we go again, man. Somebody else picked our issue. Man, we need to be mad because somebody said that this person don't like black people. That's the only time we get angry. He don't like us. Well, we're going to go up to Tallahassee and we're going to march to Tallahassee. 500 black folk went up there on the nonsense about African-American studies in AP. We should have been up there saying, why don't more of our children have access to AP, advanced placement? That's where the bag is. That's where the money comes from for college. But again, we that ain't what we're interested in. We're interested in the racial curveball, that somebody don't like us because we look like we look. Enough's enough. We got to do better. Now they're pushing the pivot about the Nashville shooter. I got to get there for a few minutes on this, right? The Nashville shooter, a young lady, transgender, I don't know. I'm not even going, whatever that's going on, right? Now they say, oh, it was anti-Christian. Was it about guns? Was it about transgender? Was it about, nobody said, was it about mental health, right? It's about mental health. Cut it out. If you can go on a place and just murder people you don't know, first of all, you got a mental health issue. And you got hatred for sure. But stop it. Look, the whole gun conversation is not going to move. I promise you. Not in our lifetimes. That is a wasted conversation. How long have we seen this happen over and over again? Sandy Hook and many of the mass shootings did not move the needle. How much time are we going to spend on guns? I'm convinced that it is a weapon of mass distraction. Nobody is going to take Americans' guns. There are more guns in this country than people. It's not going to happen. Common sense gun legislation probably would work, but what all these people who don't do any research before they get to microphones and in front of people, the NRA is a very strong lobby. But everybody's taking money from the NRA. It just ain't Republicans, I promise you. The NRA has a multitude of arms that have different names and not just the National Rifle Association. And everybody's taking money. All of my Democrat friends in Congress right now, especially the older guys, are gun guys. Benny Thompson is a hunter, and he's got big guns. He's the congressman from Mississippi. He's got big guns, right? I guarantee you the congressman from South Carolina, Jim Clyburn, got guns, right? The problem is we need common sense gun legislation, but it's not going to happen because there are too many people throwing the rock and hiding their hand. And until we come to the microphones and get some of these clowns off the air, it is so many idiots talking. Some of these people, you know, I'm so enraged when I watch these black people. Shout out to Teslin Figaro, my good friend who sat with this microphone with me for many years. She's doing great things. And we need people like Teslin Figaro speaking on this. People who understand the mindset of those people. It's amazing how many of these educated Negroes get these positions and they, oh, yeah, we got him coming over here to talk about what's happening in the hood. He don't know what's happening in the hood. I saw a guy the other day, I can't remember this clown's name. It's talking about, yeah, we got to stop these big guns because these big guns is what's ruining the black community. Do you understand how many mass shootings in the black community has happened with these large guns?
With handguns.
Right. But he doesn't know. Somebody sent him, okay? Somebody sent him, hey, you go talk about this. He don't know. He ain't been over there. That's not our crisis. Stop picking our crisis, right? If you want to talk about what can turn the community in which I come from, and many of us, go to the community, take people who understand what's happening. You got a real problem with affordable housing. There are people, look, first of all, what makes you think that these people you vote for are going to care about you when there are 400,000 homeless veterans, plus homeless veterans who served this great country, sleeping on the bridges all over this country, right? Think about this. A few years ago, they passed some legislation called the VASH Act, right? VASH, Veterans Assisted Housing, right? And the criteria to qualify disqualified most of the veterans because nobody cares. It's all fluff. It's all propaganda. And it always happens when it's coming up to election time. We need to stand down. I can't remember which rapper it was a few years ago who said that we got to hold our vote hostage. At what point do we say, all right, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to play with y'all this cycle and see what happens. But here we go. We run back out and, you know, it's always race. It's always race when they need to vote. You know, it's always going to be race coming up to the vote. And that they know what incites us. They know what incites us. Race. Somebody don't like us. So I'm going to go vote and get him out of there because somebody told me that he didn't like black folk. Wow. We got to be careful. Listen, 352-717-4071 is the number to dial. You know, when you come in here and you got so much on your mind, guys, it's like, oh, I had to get all that off. I didn't really spend a lot of time working the show because I just had so much on my mind, and it's just really bothering me. Little things like I started this conversation, banks that have taken advantage of black homeowners, right? They just kind of swept under the rug when many of these banks, the big banks, Wells Fargo, Countrywide, and all these banks that just pimp black folk at the hands of black folk, and that just kind of went away, right? And it went away because the people you vote for didn't go hard in the paint.
So what were they doing, though?
Bad mortgages, putting people in bad deals. A lot of bad deals, but I want to say there are some people who took that seriously and made noise. Maxine Waters was one of them. Corrine Brown and many of the old heads. I don't mean to call them old heads. The older politicians who come from the screaming and hollering political conversation really got on that, and I want to thank them for that. At least the conversation got out there. But now you got these new people, and I don't know what they stand for. I don't know what half of them stand for. You know, last week I did a show, the NAACP, man, the National Association for the Advancement of Corporate Protectionism, Ooh. Right? They issued a warning to black people not to travel to Florida. Like how ridiculous and nonsensical is that, right? The NAACP Really, you have nothing better to do than to issue a national warning telling black people not to travel to Florida? That's a weapon of mass distraction. Shut up, NAACP, and make a difference like you did when Thurgood Marshall was there, right? When many of those people who really cared. And it gets to a point, right, where when you got a group like the National Association for the Advancement of Certain People, right? when you got an organization like this, right, that will get to a microphone and say this is criminally incompetent to say black people don't go to Florida, don't travel to Florida. Come on, for real. That's what we're doing.
What was their reasoning though? Like what?
Well, because they say Florida was dangerous and it didn't treat black people right. Okay? So then that means don't go to Indiana or Illinois or Mississippi or Alabama. Cut it out. Cut it out, right? There are many black people who benefit from tourist dollars in this state. And to say don't come to Florida is criminally incompetent at best. Stop it. Do better. It's just wrong, man. And again, weapons of mass distraction. It's always looked like it's one of us, right? And then I watched the interview of one of the guys, man, and I'm like, come on, this can't be for real, right? Yeah, Phil, it's just, what are we doing? And then I'm watching the threads and the black people are like, yeah, don't come to Florida. Yeah, we need to stand down and don't go to Florida because I go to Miami every year. Well, guess what? To those of us who live outside of Miami, we don't consider Miami Florida. Okay?
No,
absolutely.
The country of Miami.
Okay, it's the country of Miami, right? So whatever happens in Miami happens in Miami. The fact of the matter is we have to be careful. The bells re-ring. And we spend more time. The NAACP should be out here talking about this home ownership gap. Absolutely. Should be talking about this education problem that we're seeing in many of our public school systems. John, the NAACP should have been in Eatonville. Go ahead, Phil.
That's what I was about to ask you. Did the
NAACP didn't say a word about Eatonville.
Nothing.
At all.
Wow. We interviewed Vera King.
Yes.
Longtime resident of Eatonville.
Right.
She poured her heart out.
Yes.
About what's going on.
Right.
And the NAACP said nothing.
Not a word.
And she's been on other news outlets, public news outlets.
NAACP decides to tell people not to come to Florida. Even though you go to the convention center in Orlando, you have the Alpha Kappa Alpha Conference Convention. You got the Delta Sigma Theta Convention. Many of the fraternities come here to have their conventions. You have the AME Church. These conferences are bringing 20, 30,000 people. And then you got these people from the National Association for Coontastic Behavior, okay, coming to microphones saying don't come. Cut it out. Lisa Williams at the convention center, probably in her 30th year, has been booking these giant groups of African Americans who come here and spend millions of dollars. So that's mean, hey, the Classic need to go, right? That's what we're saying. Get rid of the Florida Classic because some idiot in the NAACP is saying don't come to Florida. This is why and guess what? And the media took it and ran down the street with it. That's a non-story.
It's completely non-story.
It's a non-story. But once you bring race into the conversation, it's always a story, man. And it's draining, guys. I'm telling you, you don't even understand how draining it is for me to sit here and I'm sitting on the street and talking to people and they're always asking me, Don, how, man? How does that happen, right? How does that happen? It happens because we allow people to come in and bring us their crisis and turn our backs on ours. That's on us. Listen, the NAACP is an irrelevant organization. I interviewed the president of the NAACP Central Florida chapter, Orange County chapter, Cran Riley, the other day. Great guy. And you could tell he didn't know. You could tell he didn't know. And he's a good dude. But again, why do we continue to buy into these weapons of mass distraction? Because they know if you put the race card, I'm telling you, in a minute, somebody going to drop the N-word right before the election. Somebody going to drop the N-word. Somebody going to say the N-word before the election. Okay? They're going to find an old tape of somebody on the other side of the conversation saying the N-word.
Biden, didn't he say it a bunch of times?
Yeah, but guess what? Obama told him that he was all right. Biden is the biggest racist in the conversation today.
Last year, we had a few episodes. You showed a bunch of videos that I have never seen or heard before of what he was talking about with the drug deals that he was doing.
Absolutely.
Man, I didn't know any about that.
Again, right?
It was buried.
You go look at who committed the most legislative action to bringing everything negative to black people. I could tell you it was coming from people who you probably give your vote to. I'm just saying we got to pay attention, guys. It is draining. I'm so drained by this. Every time I turn the TV on and they're talking about black people and white people who don't like black people. Come on, really? Come on. And I want to say to some of my pastor buddies, you got to spend your time in your pulpit getting people to understand. Look, I'm listening to people, right? Lady stopped me yesterday, and she started crying. And she says to me, oh, my God, I heard Vera King on the show last week, and I couldn't believe it. And she said she couldn't believe it because she didn't understand that white people did good things for black people in that era. I'm not like, what do you mean? She was like, I did not know that white people were even nice to black people in that era. And this is where we are today. And I'm telling you, the narrative is a tricky narrative, right? It's going to drive this situation. Like these young kids now, look, if you got a young kid, listen to me. And I don't know who you guys are out there who may have young kids, teenage kids. These kids don't care about that. They don't care about race. I promise you. And if they get to that point, then that's because the adults are driving this conversation. These kids don't care about race. They don't care about gender. They just want to be friends. Phil, you know what I'm talking about.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
The thing is, to grow, you can't grow if you don't know, right? I live by that.
Okay, I get you.
You can't grow if you don't know, right? I think we need to spend more time teaching people how to get along with each other, even if there's differences politically, right? It's amazing how there are people who won't even talk to other people because of their political affiliation. But an old dude told me a long time ago, and he was an old black guy, Mr. Wanzo, had the barbershop. He said, Donnie, he said, the difference is Republicans have Democrat friends. Democrats don't have Republican friends. And I thought about that years later, right? And we got to stop, man. Listen, people, this is America. You can vote the way you vote. You can engage the way you engage. But when you take it on and it becomes personal, look, I got a friend. I love this cat, LB. I talk about him all the time, Liberal Bob. And we spend hours together. And I don't agree with anything he's saying, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's a white liberal, right? He's a white liberal and he's a white feel-good liberal. But he's a great dude and I love him, right? But some of the things he said just so nonsensical. And I'm like, okay, that sounds like a little white guilt, right? Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, but I still talk to him and we enjoy each other's company. And he's always with us, the brothers, right? And we call him LB and we love him like he's our brother. But this is what we need to see more of. You would be amazed if you spend some real time sitting down with somebody who has a different ideology than you. I would love to see more of that because you realize at this point that it's all politricks and not politics. It's a game being played. And as long as we allow the divide, the weapons of mass distraction, to raise their ugly heads and push us into a place that we find ourselves stuck. Look, there's nothing more important right now to Don Miller than the bag, okay? Mm-hmm. And that should be important to everybody out here raising families, right? Trying to build something, trying to build wealth, right? Trying to create wealth and get your children educated. We should be focused on the bag in every aspect of getting the bag, right? So we should really be concerned about our children and what classes they're taking, right? And what classes are going to move them to the next level. But we are out here letting people come in and tell us what to be mad about. And I can't do it anymore. And I hope we all take a minute in the next few days because the propaganda getting ready to be at a level you've never seen before. I hope we all take a minute in the next few days and think about the basic things that are missing in our community that other communities have and why they have it. Just basic basic things. You look at the number of black kids who can't swim right now, right?
I'm on.
That's overwhelming. And no black kid, no baby, and come on, right? They go look at these numbers. That's a problem, right?
I can't swim.
I can't swim either, but guess what? Okay, I wasn't gonna get in the pool in my neighborhood because it was brown. But the point I make is this, right? There are things that we are missing, and why are we missing them? Because we vote just like everybody else, for the most part, especially older people in our community. We vote. Look, do me a favor, subscribe and like, tell your friends about the show. But I'm just saying we got to raise our hand and say, I'm not. Nope, don't bring that over here. And in the next few weeks, with this Donald Trump conversation and this indictment that just came down, that's going to be the news for the next few weeks. And I get it if you don't like Mr. Trump. A lot of people don't like Mr. Trump, and I understand Mr. Trump has said some things and a lot of things that he probably definitely shouldn't have said, okay? But Mr. Trump is probably the greatest dog whistle politician that we've probably ever seen, and he moved his base. And if you understand politics, everybody cares about their base more than anything else. But we need to understand how politics work. We're mad at a guy who's ringing a bell. Now, there are people who say, yeah, but the bell is racially motivated. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You telling me Barack Obama didn't ring the racial bell to get Negroes to rise up? Absolutely. That's politics. That's politricks. I am concerned that when you leave the polling place and you let these people who only wanted your vote with this mindset that's still in your head, man, we got to do better, man. You got to listen, man. I just tell you, we got to figure it out. Let's go to the phone lines.
All right, hang on.
Oh,
All right, go ahead, Don.
sorry. I didn't want to come in with this attitude. Hey, you're on the Don Miller Show.
Man, you moving 100 miles per hour. You done gave me 16 topics, and I got one that I want to talk about that you kind of rang the bell on and then ran away from.
Mm-hmm.
This TL, man.
Mm-hmm. I know who it is. Go ahead.
You rang the bell and talked about the politicians who all accept money from the NRA.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm going to take this money. And then I heard you say something in regards to the young politicians. You don't know what they stand for.
Mm-hmm.
The older politicians are the problem. I'm not trying to be somebody abusing up on old people, or I'm not trying to be biased to older people. But when you got an 80-year-old person and a 70-year-old person and a 75-year-old person running for office, and they continue to have a certain mindset from a different time than the people that they're trying to serve now,
mm-hmm.
then we're not going to be on the same page.
Okay. And so what are you saying? I'm curious.
I'm saying, I hear the narrative that I don't know what these young people are trying to do. And the older people who accept money from the NRA, and they continue to say, I'm sorry for your loss, but change nothing.
Okay.
The older politicians, as they say, drain the swamp. The swamp is full of older artifacts right now.
Okay.
And we need new, youthful, thoughtful ideas that serve the community and the base that has an average age of around about 44 right now. Someone twice our age that ain't hearing us.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point.
Email.
Someone twice my.
So what you're saying is, so you and I have had this discussion before. We are truly living in a gerontocracy, okay? And I agree wholeheartedly regarding the gerontocracy, right? But so now that we recognize that if you look at the age, absolutely, people get there and they sit there, right? How do we change that? How do we change it? Actually, how do we change it, right? Because, you got to understand. Let me just break this down. A gerontocracy is a state, a society, or group governed by old people, okay?
Right.
A state, a society, or a group governed by old people is a gerontocracy. The average age in the United States Senate probably looms closer to 70 than it does to 50, right? And probably in the House closer to 65 than it does to 50, right? And
correct.
And people get there and they sit there. But unless you get out and vote, these people are going to continue to receive funding from people they've taken care of their second and third terms to make them keep the 14th and 15th term, right? So how do you change that, right? A young man, Maxwell Frost, 24-year-old, just won a congressional seat in Central Florida. And Maxwell, I believe his heart is absolutely 100% in the right place, okay? But he's 24, okay? And hopefully, and I'm starting to see that there are people who've taken him under their wing, and that is so good to hear that he is even open to people taking him under their wing. You have to learn how it works, right? And I'm sorry, if you go there and you're going to be a bull in the china shop, they're going to get you out of there. You watch what happened to that squad that came in a few years ago, the young people. Wait till this election cycle comes up. They're going to be gone, most of them, because they came in and didn't kiss the ring. It shouldn't be like that, but that is the way it is. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. I say you're touching on all the points that's an issue. It's like we've had these people in office, like what you say, they get there and they sit there, and then they have zero plan on bringing someone up that they can trust, that they can feel like can carry the mantle and move the country forward. They don't do any of that. I mean, you said it many times on your radio broadcast. You have friends in that arena. And they don't have a succession plan.
No, not at all. Not at all. And again, there's no excuse for the United States to be living at the level of gerontocracy that we are living. Okay? And again, a gerontocracy is a state, a society, or a group governed by old people, right? This is not a knock on old people, because don't hit me with the ageism nonsense. I'm old myself, right? The fact of the matter is we have to find young people who are comfortable learning. And look, can you imagine 27 years old going to Congress? Can you imagine if you ain't grounded or you don't come from some people that you know, when you go back to your district, you still so-and-so, that can go to your head. And I think to find young people that are comfortable going up, learning, and finding somebody to attach themselves to tag onto, which I think what Maxwell Frost is doing, and I'm so glad to hear that, then I just believe, you know, when you look at the young lady from New York, what was her name? The congresswoman who used to be the bartender, right? She went in there like a bull. Yeah, she went in there like a bull in a china shop. She's not going to be there long, right? You got to go in like so many of the people who followed the great people who represented this country, and they went in and they sat there and they listened, and that's when there was secession plans, right? But, you know,
man, look, you should be the liaison.
I can't be the liaison, man. I tried that, right? I tried that. Okay. Thank you so much, TL, man. What you got going on over at the TL podcast?
Man, look, I'm in pain right now. I'm still nursing an injury, and I can barely.
That ain't no injury, man. Cut it out, dude. Cut it out, man.
I'm injured. You're
getting old, and you need to stop wearing them tight pants. Okay, them skinny jeans. You're getting old, man. Be like, get you some pants, some loose pants, man.
You just proved my point.
I know.
You just proved my point.
I am. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you, TL. Thank you, man. Phil, okay, we were talking about the NAACP a few minutes ago, NAACP, and the fact of the matter is the NAACP is an irrelevant organization that is becoming more and more irrelevant. And I did hit a lot of topics, and I want to just say, look, I hit a lot of topics today because I want you to go back. Hopefully you can go back and pull up this show in the next few days and take some notes, and then go look up some of the things I've talked about, because next week I'm going to take my time and we're going to go over some of those things. I just want to put a lot of stuff out there to just prove the point of just how ridiculous the weapons of mass distraction have gotten, right? And when the front page of every major newspaper in America had the story that the NAACP tells black people not to come to Florida, and I'm like, okay, and where was the NAACP when George Floyd was murdered? Did anybody see them then? The NAACP is driving a narrative. They are getting financed to drive a narrative, okay? Go ahead. Phil, you got that clip? I want you to watch this clip. Watch this clip.
Black people, quote, don't come to Florida. They're seeking permission from the national headquarters to issue a travel advisory to our state.
This travel advisory comes as a slew of state bills are targeting race and gender identity, and they're moving through the legislature.
NBC2 story Kinley spoke to Lee County's NAACP leaders about the message this sends to tourists, which is the lifeblood of our economy.
We are going to educate the people about Florida and what Florida is doing to black people that no black person should want to voluntarily come and be subjected to it.
James Muakil
Okay, stop
is
right
the
there.
president.
Stop. That's the point. I just made the point, right? Right? The NAACP need to have a meeting and figure out what it's doing, okay? And because, come on, really? Phil, play that again for me, man. Just go back to this a little bit on that. Because this is what I'm talking about.
All right, hang on.
This makes no sense. This makes no sense, Philip.
No black person should want to voluntarily come and be subjected to it.
James Muakil is the president of the Lee County chapter of the NAACP. He was at the Florida NAACP conference in Orlando this weekend. They voted unanimously to bring this travel advisory recommendation to the national organization. He says this is designed to keep more black Americans from visiting or moving to Florida.
That's what we're saying to them. Don't come into racism. Stay away from it.
James says
Okay, stop. That's enough. Like, somebody need to call him and tell him, first of all, take your hat off. Okay? You're doing an interview with a whole can go on. And, sir, man, what do you mean don't come into racism? Does that make sense to anybody? That's the propaganda nonsense that I'm talking about. That's the problem right there. Now, somebody just sent me a message and say, Don, you got to tell the story that your situation with the NAACP. And look, I don't let my history be a mystery. I am probably, and by all intents and purposes, the first black person. You get that, yeah? Okay. I got to put this out there because I don't want everybody to be like, well, Don don't like the NAACP anyway, right? I just think an organization with such storied history should be doing better than that. That's all I'm saying. That's all. You know, and to make that, I'm telling you, that is absolutely incompetent. Did you get it?
I lost connection to my computer.
Okay, it's not right. It's not right at all. And I just think those are the type of things that we should not even, let's be clear. We should find that funny. We should find that funny. We should find it absolutely nonsensical. And I find it absolutely criminally incompetent to tell people in America that don't come to Florida because of racism to and affect the tourism in Florida, where a lot of black and brown people work in the tourism industry, right? So you get ready to put people in a position that if these people don't come, that they may lose their jobs. That is incompetent and it's wrong as heck. But again, right, it made front page news because somebody is driving this somebody told Uncle James to go on TV and say that nonsense. And I hope somebody told him because I hope he's not. What was that about? Don't come to Florida because, look, let me just say this. If you think that one state in America is the state with all the racism, you're an idiot right there. Listen to me. Ignorance, I promise you, is curable. Stupidity is forever. We have to do better, guys. But we also got to call it out, man. I'm amazed that I didn't see any black people go to microphones and say, well, man, you know how many black businesses benefit from people coming to Florida? Cut it out. Everybody's afraid to say something. So people like Mr. James, Uncle James, okay, can go to the microphone and say stuff like that. That was not cool in any way. And I'm amazed that no major black person, even with a business in Florida, said, hey, hold on, man. Listen, so people want me to put on the record my issue or history with the NAACP. I probably am the first black person to be denied entrance into an NAACP chapter. Phil, you can, and so I'm putting that on the record. Yes, many years ago, I wanted to join the NAACP, and I was told that I could not join the NAACP. And I was hurt by it because I really wanted to become a part of it and become a part of making a difference. But I had questioned the organization's local chapter about their inability to speak on issues that were pertinent to the black community. And they told me that I crossed the line and, I was wrong. So there it is right there. I was absolutely asked to leave. Matter of fact, it was me and D'Amica. They told us to get out of the meeting, and I was a lawyer. A lawyer saw that story in a paper somewhere, and reached out to me and wanted to represent me because he was a Jewish lawyer who was related to Mary Ovington, the Jewish woman who was one of the founding members of the NAACP, along with Ida B. Wells Barnett, W.E.B., and he wanted to represent me because he was appalled by me being rejected by the NAACP. So again, ignorance is curable. Stupidity is definitely forever. Again, so thank you so much. I just want you to know I'll be here every Thursday. I'm committed to this. I thank you so much, Phil. Hey, you guys, subscribe and like. Tell your friends. Sorry I had to hit so many topics in one show. Normally, I'm more committed to one topic, but I just want to tell you I really appreciate all the support I've been getting. It is not easy to come in here and do this. The plan is to extend this broadcast in the near future. I just want to really be able to come in and have good conversation. Or you could also check me out 12 p.m. Eastern time at the Don Miller Show, streaming live on Facebook on Fridays, 12 p.m., the radio show broadcast. If you're in Central Florida, 100.7 FM on radio. But again, I just want to say, I just had to come in here today, get a bunch of stuff off my chest because what I saw in the last few days was absolutely propaganda, and more than anything else, they were weapons of mass distraction. The Donald Trump indictment is a weapon of mass distraction, and I hope we start to pay close attention. Then we're going to realize that this is a misdemeanor. Donald Trump is not going to jail on this charge. I'm sure there are a lot of people want to see that happens, but it's highly unlikely that he's going to jail. And more importantly, guys and ladies, do some research. Even if he is convicted of a felon, even if he's convicted of a felony, even if he is a convicted felon, he still can run for president of the United States. That is not a disqualifying factor. So if he is convicted in both New York and when they go after him in Georgia, then he is still qualified under the Constitution of the United States to run for president of the United States. So this is not going to disqualify him from his candidacy if he chooses to continue. So when you know that that's the situation, then it makes you think twice about what it's really all about. He cannot be asked to leave the candidacy even if he is a convicted felon. Think about this, guys. Let's think about this. We live in a country where as a convicted felon, you can't even work for the government, but you can run it. Ooh. That's a weapon of mass distraction. You can't get a job with the government, most of the agencies, but you can run the government as a convicted felon. There are agencies that you cannot get a job if your credit score is not at a certain level, but you can run the country with $100 million in debt. And if you don't think that that is propaganda, then shame on you. So again, let's continue to watch what's happening. I'm telling you, it's a weapon of mass distraction. Let's focus on some things that's going to make a difference in our communities. Let Washington be Washington and commit to your local communities. That is where the change is going to come. I promise you. The change is going to come in your local community. I want to shout out those people in Eatonville just to let everybody know who's been listening to the last few shows. There was a lawsuit filed by the Southern Poverty Law Center on the Eatonville case. So the lawsuit has been filed, and there is probably another lawsuit coming, quite possibly by the Hungerford descendants, the family that gave the land to Eatonville to build Hungerford Prep. So stay with us. We'll continue to follow that. Follow me at all platforms, Don Miller Show, The Don Miller Show. And guess what? I'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Phil, I love you, bro. TL, thanks, man. Credit Gene Johnson and the Johnson family, Ridiculous Behavior. Sam and everybody. My friend Dan over at the Roadie place in the mall in Ocoee. Man, I'm out of here. Bye-bye, everybody.